Welcome to Life Alchemy. This week we're going to be talking about going from bitter to better. Have you had any experiences through life where it's left a bitter taste in your mouth, or are you able to move it on to something better? I'm really looking forward to this week, not because it's my topic, slightly biased, but this week's topic is bitter to better. So let's get started. Have you ever had experiences that you've felt have left a bitter taste in your mouth or have changed you in some way? I'm going to throw it straight out there and get it going.
When you first shared like this topic, I thought, I don't ever really a bitter person. I don't really get bitter about stuff. I normally always kind of like, think, what's the silver lining? What can I learn from it? But then I remembered a couple of occasions, and there were two, and both of the ones that I can think of are related to employment. So the first one was when I was 21, 22, and I was in my first serious job, and I absolutely loved it. But it was a startup; it had grown really quickly, and I had to decide if I wanted. There's a reorganisation. I had to decide if I wanted to stay and choose a role, or if I just wanted to leave. So I decided to leave, even though I was really upset. I was really upset about it because it felt like a family, and I'd learned so much. And I really didn't want to leave. I didn't want to stay stuck in this one pigeonhole role. But everyone, I worked for different teams. Everyone was really supportive, and there was this one manager, and I was going to have 3 months gardening leave. There's this one manager, and she sent an email to the director saying, "Sarah's still got this all outstanding work," which is a complete lie. An absolute lie. And I was only 22. So I said to the director, I was fuming, and I guess I was quite bitter about it. But then I just thought, you know what, I'm not having this. And even though I was only young and she was a lot older than me, and it was my first job, the director said, well, I'm in back-to-backs for the next couple of weeks. So you're going to have to wait if you want me there, or do you want to just have a one-to-one with her? And I was thinking, oh God, it's quite intimidating. But I did, and I just arranged a meeting with her, and I went through it, and I was like, okay, here's the list. One, this is the fact. Before I got to number 5, she was like, do you know what, Sarah? Because she knew that she was lying. So she said, oh look, let's just leave it. Because one of the things she wanted me to stay for is to cover her holiday.
No.
She was like, I'm going on a holiday next week, so I need someone to cover. And I was like, oh my God, are you serious? So that was that. And on my leave, and I really didn't like, she was railroaded me all the time to credit and stuff. And on my leaving day, she got me this really expensive necklace. And I was so I actually gave it away.
God.
So
Guilt. Yeah, that's guilt if I've ever heard it.
Yeah. And then another time was another employment where I took them, where I was made redundant after another reorg. But it was just after I'd been signed off with depression. And all my performance was really, was on point and everything. There was all talk about future projects and stuff like that. And in the leave exit or thingy interview, they let a couple of things slip, oh, you've been given a double-edged sword because actually they've asked you to do, and to be honest with you, I don't think the senior partners will replace you after 6 months. And it was a personal thing. It wasn't but because I hadn't been there for the 2-year mark, it was just under, I couldn't, no one would take it on. So I thought I'll do it myself. Meanwhile, I was depressed. And then in the end, I got really angry about it. Their response was they were lying, they were saying, oh, I told her this. And it was all lies. And I felt so drained and I felt so angry. But then I had this turning point, and I thought, look, I can keep this going on, but actually it's really negative. And I just see it as, I could continue to be bitter about it, but actually it's a blessing in disguise because I hated it there anyway. It was a really toxic environment, and I can go off and do, and that's when I started to work for myself. And I was like, I'm never working for anyone again. I'm going to do my own thing. But it's hard. When you're in it, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's such a good way of looking at it, though, to get to a point where you actually look and say, well, I wasn't happy anyway. It's so important. A lot of people who go through these experiences and have these bitter stories or bitter to better stories, they're often to do with other people. Emma, Roz, what have you got any thoughts or feelings on this?
I think it's similar to Sarah, actually. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking, most of the time I try and, like, if something hasn't gone my way, or, like, I try to think, what can I learn? What is it teaching me? Or try and have a lens of compassion towards the other person. And that really helps a lot of the time. But there are times where there's some stuff that's just left a bit of tape and it's stuck. So an example of that, I think, is when things don't feel very fair, and it's probably a core value of mine. And if something rocks my core value, then obviously it's a lot more difficult for you to go, oh, it's all right, or I'll let it go. But I remember I was quite young. It was like my early 20s, and I was very ambitious. Wanted to, like, always looking for the next job, next opportunity. How else can I get, like, promoted or whatever? And I saw an opportunity that a big contract was coming to an end. But there's nobody there to do that piece of work. There's a massive, it was a £40 million project for the bank. And I thought, I want to do that. Yeah, that'd be great for my career. So anyway, I found a way to, take the HR director down for a coffee as we were talking. I sort of said, look, I think there's a piece of work here. I'd really like to do it. I know that it's like a stretch, but I feel I can. Can I? And by the time I'd finished going downstairs and coming back upstairs, he was like, yeah, that's brilliant. Of course you can. If you feel like you want to, we'll rearrange it so you can do this project. It was an 18-month project. So I thought, brilliant. Naturally afterwards, I then thought, right, well, this is the job of somebody like a level or two above me. So I need to at least get paid for it fairly, of course. And I learned that you had to ask for pay rises because no one's ever going to offer you it. Okay. So I remember saying, so I've looked at the job, I've scoped it. This is what the market's paying, just as an acting up allowance or something. Is there something that we could review? Could we have a conversation? And without any sort of thought or let me go and think about it, I got told, no, we can't, no, we can't, no, we can't. And I asked why, and they were like, well, we don't have the budget. And I'm like, okay. Then I thought to myself, what do I do? So I could either, it really bothered me because I just didn't think it was very fair. So I thought, what do I do? I could either say, well, I don't want to do it for the extra effort because it would be a lot of effort, a lot of responsibility. And why should I put myself through that? I could leave because I was, you get to that point where you're like, what else, what's next? And I thought, well, I could go to another bank and get paid 15, 20K more easy, just in a different organisation by the virtue of moving. That wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, long story short, I thought, do you know what? It's such exposure. I'll do it for 18 months. I'm sure I'll learn a lot from it and I can make a decision after that. So I chose to do that. And actually it was absolutely the right decision for me. But what really got to me is literally about a week after, somebody else in the team had been given a pay rise. And I remember thinking, but I thought we had, not being funny, but I thought we didn't have any budget. And so I went to ask the boss. So I went to say, well, hang on a minute, I thought you didn't have any budget. She hasn't even changed role. Her job has not even changed. And quite frankly, there were issues with her performance, but that's another story. She'd come to work a bit drunk. Everybody knew it. It was awful. And it was terrible. And I just could not understand. I could not make sense of why, logically speaking, why there wasn't room to give me an allowance. And for somebody who, when apparently there is no budget, apparently there's no shift in role or anything, they were like, yeah, but that was agreed. And I couldn't understand the reason for it. So most of the time, I'm all right with going, things don't work out, there's a reason for it, but there, quite frankly, I don't. I think I'm still bitter about it.
So I'm guessing you were bitter and still bitter.
I am. And do you know what? Yeah, maybe I've done much better.
I know a good therapist.
And I think that's what really gets to me. I think if I'm going to talk about what makes me feel better,
unfair.
Sometimes when I look at situations and it's really underhand or covert, whether it's, and I can't tell you why people would do that. I can't hand on heart give you the reason, but you get a sense that there's a reason that somebody's treating you very differently. Yeah. You can't prove it or put your finger on it. That just doesn't sit well. And so I channel that anger, that frustration into helping other people elevate themselves, or really objective, but that still grates on me. really.
I love what you said, Gemma, about a little bit of tape that's stuck. It was a really sweet way of kind of just, that fits with me as well, that I'm not bitter about certain things, but if you get me talking about it, I'll tell you exactly how I felt then and how I'm still feeling a little bit now, if that makes sense.
What is really interesting is that this morning I thought, oh yeah, I'm not bitter about anything. And within like 2 minutes, I was like, I'll tell you, I'm still angry.
Do you not think though, the bigger, wider picture in all of this is that maybe this is kind of a forced evolution, these experiences, to make us make the decision we weren't going to ever make? Because both of you have kind of said, and I've heard this a lot, both of you have said, similar to what I've heard clients say and what I've said myself, is I knew things weren't right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the new things, and they got out the other end and they were like, oh, well, I should have moved anyway. So I wonder if there's kind of some higher source picture.
And I think it's not just like in the moment, it's got, you know, like maybe there's a bigger plan. You know, I know we all sort of share that sort of like way of thinking. But I also think it's those moments that really, really anger you or you feel bitter about, you start to understand what you really care about, what makes you tick. And then I think it's things like that, that if I look back at it, it might, like, there's an underlying theme of like either the work that I do, the people that I support or help, or businesses that I get involved in. There's a commonality. I think there's a golden thread. So I think as much as those things might stick with you and you might remain bitter about them, maybe there is a message in it that you have to keep hold on.
Love it. I really like that. I'm scribbling away here. I'm so sorry. You know what I'm like with notes. Roz, what's your thoughts? You've been...
Well, I think there's been some fantastic golden nuggets already. And I think the older I get, the more I do genuinely feel there's a plan. And you can contextualize that whatever way you want, depending on your belief system, really. You know, you can believe that that's karma or that's something divine or bigger than you. And I'm not here to say that's right or wrong. The older I get, the more I actually do believe that. But, you know, it could just be the blueprint for the evolution of you as a human being. And it is an interesting word. You know, I'm a wordsmith and I do NLP coaching. So for me, it's that bitter taste, you know, it's that aftertaste. You know, I think at the moment you're angry or you're hurt. And I'm hearing that from both Sarah and Gemma. And I've been there. I was made redundant 3 times in my former career. And one time was fine because I was given the heads up that it was going to happen. And the company was in trouble. And I actually walked with a package and set up my PR company. I walked with clients and money, and actually it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So that one was fine. The other 2, not so much. One when I was young, and that really resonated with me, Sarah, because I think I was only like about 22, 23, and I've been working my socks off. And then, you know, oh, thanks, you know, this is my reward, you know. And then another one when I was in a company, and I realized really they made me redundant because they couldn't fire me, or they knew that if they fired me, I'd take them for, you know, I'd take them with a lawyer, and they couldn't find a good enough reason. And I think I was, it was ironic. I was brought in to be an agitator and to challenge everything and shake it up. And then after a while, the MD didn't like that. And, you know, I've had a couple of those incidences in my career. And most recently, a few years back, I had a kind of where I was at the very center of an organization. And then because I was truthful and outspoken about quite a few things, and actually they sought my opinion. That's the best bit, you know, it's like the archetypal messenger, you know, the messenger always gets sent with their head in the bag. And I kind of felt it, you know, or it felt like that. I think is it Chairman Mao, you know, when the 100 days, everybody come forward with what's wrong in China, and everybody came forward and then they beheaded them all. It was like, you know, thanks for your feedback. And I even had a sense of that, but I'm so into truth and speaking my truth. And And I genuinely wanted to help the organization by saying, well, this is what I see is wrong. And then at the end of it, the worst of that one was, it was what I call death by 1,000 cuts, you know, where it wasn't even that they kind of went, oh, well, thanks, but no thanks. It was just like I was like sidelined over a period of time. And that really hurt, because when I realized what was happening, I called them on it and they were like, no, you know, and then you start, it's almost like being gaslighted, you know, you start to doubt yourself. And I think both Sarah and Hemmer have said that. It's a bit like, am I justifiably angry in this moment? Am I justifiably rattled, or am I overreacting? And of course, there's all of that. And then after the event, which I heard particularly, you know, I turned up this morning, I thought all was fine, and now I'm 2 minutes into this conversation and it's not. I see that so often with my therapy clients. You know, I really discovered it very early in my therapy work, about 5-6 years ago, when a guy who was a really committed Christian, very devout, you know, lovely guy, came for an issue. And during the kind of conversation, he's told me about his child, and he went, but I've totally forgiven my parents. And genuinely, I believe he believed he had totally forgiven them. 10 minutes into the hypnotherapy, and he was effing and blinding and like, I haven't forgiven you. You know, it was like, and the trouble is, we hold those hurts very, very deep, and cognitively we think we are okay, and then when we start talking about them, it's like taking the plaster off. The wound is still a little bit there. So I think golden nuggets, so many golden nuggets, and it is about all of those things. But if I had to conclude, I suppose I'd say that nearly all of those difficult times for me, you know, have been a case of the things that don't kill you make you stronger. And so, you know, they have actually galvanized me, reinforced me, but the hurt, you know, sometimes is still there.
Yeah, that's fair comment. That, you know, everybody's mentioned their stories, and I think the best stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a cracking conclusion. That, for me, they're the best stories. But when you're going through a life experience, you don't know it's going to be a story until it's kind of reached a certain point. And I think there's a level of trust that we have to put in place, that we have to just trust that this is opening out for us for a reason, and just be curious. Being curious really, really helps me. Really helps me to just stay open to brand new experiences. I remember a few years ago, and I'm talking on a values and morals level, similar to what you three have just said, because I feel that bit at a better journey works better when we are tweaked and sort of triggered on a moral level, if that makes sense, and our values. A few years ago, a long time ago, actually, something was said within a group of people that I had said something and I totally hadn't, and then they were lying. But it was like that feeling, you know, that feeling when you're out and about and you're all having a few drinks and someone goes, oh, you're getting drunk, and you're like, no, I'm not drunk, actually, I'm fine, I've only had a couple of drinks. Like, you're drunk. And you can't then you go and tell people, you can't. You say, I'm not drunk. No, I'm not. And everything you do and say, people are like, he's definitely drunk. Hey, look. It was like that. The more I protested, the more people were like, no, he's definitely lying. And I've learned in my time to kind of, one, not protest too much, because I don't need to explain to the outside world if I believe on the in.
Yeah.
And the next thing is, it's okay to be vulnerable in those scenarios. Like, often when we're vulnerable, we're trying to protect ourselves too much. And that's what I did. And I've learned to just be vulnerable in those situations. And so be it. If I'm the bad guy in the situation, then I'll wear that pointy hat and sit in the corner. You know, if I'm the bad guy, I'll do it. Is there anything that you do to help that journey from bitter to better? Because we've all talked about getting older, and loads of people seem to explain it as that, you know, I've got older, I've got more experience. What do you gain from your experience now?
Well, perspective. Oh, sorry, go on.
That's a good one. Perspective's good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Rosalind, I think perspective is actually a good answer, because I was thinking, I don't know whether for me, like I'm also thinking about another, how many stories I've got about how bitter I am. So another
heal.
I had a really difficult tumultuous relationship with an individual. And I was angry for such a long time. And I don't think it was the age that got me. I think often it is, you know, you get a bit, maybe your thinking matures, maybe, I don't know. But I think for me, it was about being really curious. And I had to start to think about, like, what was it? Because it created, like, obviously when you're triggered or you're angry about something, all your heckles go up, your defenses go up, you behave in a certain way. Even if that's to, like my sister used to say, oh, you're like the ice queen, you cut people out like a veruca. And I used to, that was my attitude, you know, I was like, well, I'm done with you. You mean nothing to me, that was it. But I think after a while, when I started to question, like, well, what is it why would that person behave in that way? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? What is it in me that's driving a response in them? What is it in them that's driving a response in me? What would happen if I actually said nothing rather than trying to shout my point across, or, you know, protest, as you said, Chris?
Yeah.
And I think when I started to ask myself those questions, I started to get a whole new perspective, and then things will naturally evolve. They naturally changed, and like those situations are genuinely moved from something that was really bitter, quite toxic, to something that is very different now, and like, yeah, much nicer. But I think it's curiosity as well as that, you know.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it's curious. For me, it was curiosity.
Perfect. So we've got perspective, curiosity. Similar to me, I'm trying to stay open. The older I get, the more I'm trying to stay open to just new experiences, being curious, and relying on the fact that I didn't die the last time I was angry. You know, it's okay. And I do think you're right. I feel a sense of guilt when I'm angry, especially at the end of it. And I'll often come up with things like, oh, what was I thinking? The chances are in those moments we weren't thinking. We were just being driven by something.
I think you can feel anger. And of course, if you remember that anger is hurt.
Yeah.
And so a good mantra is always, I'm angry, therefore I am hurt. And I'm hurt because. And you immediately start to deconstruct why you're hurt. And you can be angry, you can be hurt because it's a normal, valid human reaction. But maybe don't act at that time. You know, like, you know, the old I'm going to send you an email, you know, and we've all been there. And then like, just sleep on it, okay? Just type the email out and then sleep on it. And I mean, I have a brilliant example of that back in my PR days, back in the days of a fax, just so we know what we're talking about. And my niece was my PA because she was having a gap year from university, and we were really close. And I'd had a client who'd really, really rattled my cage. And I think and I'd kind of written that kind of thing and typed it out, left it on my desk as a fax. And then I went for a walk and for some lunch to calm down. I came back and she went, oh, I sent the client the fax. I was like, no. By the time I got back, we'd been fired.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, genuinely. And that was a very expensive lesson. That was a very expensive lesson. And and I didn't mean to, but I'd made the mistake of not telling her not to. And so, yeah, so feel the anger. It's a valid emotion, but it is hurt, but don't act on it in that blue, red funk or whatever it is in that moment.
That is golden. That is golden.
Two things have sprung to mind. One is, so Chris, when you were saying, you know, some people say what gets them from bitter to better, and some people say, oh, it's that age, like over time you get more experience. But actually, this whole thing just reminds me of the hero's journey, which we talked about in episode 9, where even if, you know, so you don't even need to be older or have more experience, even if you just looked at that in itself and just looked at where you possibly could be on that hero's journey, and just know that, you know, there is a beginning, a middle and an end, and the end is that you always come out better and stronger, even though at the time when you're going through something and someone says to you, you know, when people go, you know, but these things make you stronger, and you think, oh God, bugger off, like that's the last thing I want. I just don't want to hear about that right now. I don't want to be stronger, like just don't want to have this.
Exactly. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's sort of come up for me is, which Emma and I, we've talked about this recently, like just from our own personal life experience, where sometimes when you're going through something and when you talk about it, you might not be aware of your emotions, and all you do is you just stick to the facts, and then you'll just say, yeah, okay, this happened, I went to work, they had a meeting, they let me go, then I left, and then you just talk about everything like from a factual point of view. And it's only recently that I'm realizing that a lot of the stuff with health or whatever it is, that has actually been trauma. We were talking, and Hema said, I think we all have this idea that trauma is someone who's come back from the war and had their like limbs blown off. But actually trauma can be lots of different things. And so things like, so what I'm saying is, what me and Henry talked about before, is that the trauma can be, you don't realize it's that, because at the time when you're going through something or just coming out with something, we can talk about things so disconnected from our emotions, when we're just talking about the facts, that it's not until we allow to kind of go over that experience and connect with, oh, how we're actually feeling, whether it's anger, sadness, or injustice or whatever, that we can actually start to move and see start to heal, and move from bitter to better. So I don't know, what one thing I'm thinking is it time and a process? I'm
going to shut up because I know Hannah is going to respond, but I just wanted to say, from a therapeutic point of view, because obviously I deal with a lot of people with trauma, and I've had, when I came back from overseas and I went for therapy, they were, oh, you've got PTSD. I was like, oh, have I? And because I'd had all of those events, I'd had cancer, my mum dying of cancer, the divorce, financial loss, loss of my home, there's like a scale, and I'd like ticked 9 of the 10. They were like, it was like bingo, well done, you're still walking and talking and chewing gum, go you. And I think you're absolutely right, but it can be any of those little things that come. 2 things very important. PTSD, be careful, because it's post-traumatic stress. If you call it a disorder, you make it into something very big. You give it a power that you want to take the power away. So it's post-traumatic stress because you're after it. It was trauma. It stressed you. And you can deal with it, usually, it might take therapeutic or external help, but, you can deal with it. Secondly, I think perspective tends to come with age, just because you've kind of repeated stuff and you've seen it and you get that feeling, this too shall pass. But, I deal with teenagers, and you can give them perspective then. They don't have to wait till they're 45 to go, oh yeah, I was bullied at school. That was because I was cleverer than everybody else, or I was different. So perspective can come at any age, which I think we mentioned. I just wanted to make those 2 points really from a therapeutic point of view.
I love that, PTS. That's amazing. That's such a good addition. Hannah?
I was just thinking, there's just so much stuff that's been said already around like time, process, perspective, curiosity. I think I think there's already so much in there, really.
Cool. When I'm doing workshops, I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago with a couple of clients, and I put a picture up of the wake of a boat. So you can't see the boat, you can just see the water. You see a wake going away from the picture, and I always ask, what do you see? What is it? And then I often say, what does it mean to you? So I ask a couple of questions and just leave them to it. And some people say water, horizon, the sun's in the background. And I always conclude, or it always comes to some conclusion with someone says the stuff that's left behind, because it doesn't drive the boat. It maybe tells you where the boat's been. It might give an indication of where the boat's heading to for a short period of time. But actually, the longer time goes on, that wake settles, and it's the stuff that's left behind. It's in the past for a reason. And then I often go on to talk to people about, well, what does drive the boat? Well, there's a person or some things driving the boat. It's the present day energy that's driving it, but we've got to be facing the right way. And I think that's really crucial when we're talking about going from bitter to better, is face the right way, work out what's your shit and what's their shit, really, when it comes down to it. What's yours and what's theirs? When you compartmentalize it, it seems a lot less of a challenge. It seems more of a gift at that point. And then when we look at our past experiences and we go, well, actually, I've repeated this 3 or 4 times. Well, almost a little bit of shame on you, really, for letting that kind of roll out 3 or 4 times. And I think that's the key when we're going from bitter to better, is just notice those moments, realize the stuff that's left behind is in the past. It's in the past for a reason. And it doesn't dictate where you decide, because we've all talked about choices and decisions, where you decide to go, does it?
No.
So any who to follows before we start to wrap up? Any thoughts and feelings? I know.
Well, I've had a few while we've been talking about this, because the Matrix movie is coming out in December, the new one.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I had my perforated eardrum a few weeks ago and had a few days off, I watched the trilogy because I thought, I'll watch the trilogy, then I'm ready for the new one. And I must say, Morpheus has got some cracking quotes, of which now I can't remember hardly any of them. But watch the Matrix, because or maybe if you just Google quotes by Morpheus, he's my new Yoda at the moment, Chris, because he's very much a man who, there's a great quote at one point where somebody says, nobody will believe you, and he says something along the lines of, my beliefs do not rely on other people believing them. And I'm like, oh, that's really profound,
I really like that.
And then when Neo's in the flat with the Oracle, there's a sign and it says Pemet Nostre, and I'm going to have that as my next tattoo. And it means look within.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the Matrix, that's my thing.
Awesome. Love it. Anyone else got who to follow, what to follow?
I was just thinking of the hero's journey, just in context with this, Bitter to Better, and what you were saying earlier, Chris, about, there's always a beginning, middle, and an end. And sometimes when you're in the middle, you can't see, or you think this is it, but actually this too shall pass, and you'll definitely come out stronger and wiser.
Love it. Emma?
My who to follow is, once again, my own advice. So I would say, just take a moment to have a think of like something that is, like still really grates on you, like we all have them. There's a thing that will really naturally push your buttons, and just spend a bit of time with it and just inquire, ask yourself, like, what is it that's frustrating you? What is it that's like, why is that having such an impact? Because I think the more you do those, you ask yourself those questions, you start to learn a little bit more about yourself. And I think that helps with the journey of, like, even if you don't know it's happening at the time, it's unfolding, but I just think it helps you unravel, I think, what's going on.
That's great. I'm going to build on that and just add in there that I ask 2 questions when I'm going through something and it's overplaying in my mind. Is what I'm thinking right now useful or useless? And I just put it in 2 piles. I don't mess around with grey areas. It's no grey hair. It's black and it's white. It's left or it's right. And I just say, is it this side or this side? Is it useful or useless? If it's useless, ditch it, get rid of it, bin it, it's gone. If it's useful, embrace it, grab it and run with it. So what a great way to end with our podcast. You've been listening to Life Alchemy. Thank you so much for listening. We will be covering in the next topic, emotions in the workplace. How exciting. Looking forward to that. So see you next time. Thank you.